There's a sweet spot for the music fan. If you love music enough, or in fact, if you love anything enough and you can make it your life, and you can turn around at some point in your life when you allow yourself the chance to reflect and say, wow, I went from fan to adding value to this experience for others, and I was able to contribute something. That sweet spot is something I've really strived to achieve, and there are people in my life who have inspired me to do so. Quincy Jones, Rick Rubin has inspired me to do that. You know, some of the world's biggest music fans. But the ultimate music fan to me is sitting in front of me right now, and it's just a great pleasure and privilege to meet you for the first time, even if it is on the record. Clive Davis, thank you for your time.
Well, I'm so happy to really be here today with you.
You know, I was thinking when I was watching the documentary, that's really what it is. It's you became a fan of music, and that's what's led you the whole way through.
In Jewish families, you studied to be either a doctor or a lawyer. So I never loved blood, so I studied to be a lawyer. I became a lawyer, and 2 years out of law school, I was offered the job of counsel for Columbia Records. I didn't know anything about music. I was a music fan of radio, but I really didn't collect records. There was nothing in my background which led me to believe that this would become my passion. And 5 years after being a lawyer, I was offered the job of head of Columbia Records, and that's how I got in the record business.
You protect your artists with such passion and loyalty that there's nothing you wouldn't go to, no length you wouldn't go to ensure that their music and their art is protected, or at least given a chance.
What you've just articulated so well has been, honestly, my byword. If artists, you know, I signed self-contained artists, and in my years at Columbia, when I signed, my first artist was Janis Joplin, and then Chicago and Santana and Earth, Wind and Fire. They were self-contained, and I really just guided their careers, making sure that they were getting the largest audience without bastardizing their creative integrity. So when I started from scratch, Arista, A&R, as many of you know, means artist and repertoire. At Columbia, everyone that I signed, they were an artist. They were self-contained. They came up with their own material. I so desperately wanted Arista to be an instant major, to compete against Columbia, to compete against RCA.
Because to some degree you were still, I mean, I know your intentions were pure, but was there a drive that came from a place of revenge is too strong, but frustration, disappointment in the way you were treated by Columbia? Like, if I have an opportunity again, I will show them I can do it again.
You're very articulate and very spot on. A few things I will say to that. The work ethic came from the New York City public schools. The work ethic came because I was in college, a freshman. I lost both my parents separately. I had no money, and so everything I did was on scholarship. So if I got below a B-plus average, I would lose, and I didn't have any money to go to NYU or to Harvard Law School. So the work ethic was there. But the drive to show that I could do it with a company from scratch, that it wasn't that I was head of Columbia. I only paid every artist other than Joplin because I had to buy her contract. She had never recorded before, but I had to buy it from Mainstream Records, who technically had the right to make her first album. But every other artist cost 10 grand, 15,000. It wasn't that that anybody couldn't come up with that amount of money to sign them. So I felt, you know, I could start from the scratch, but rock had changed. With the advent of new wave, with punk rock, I was signing Patti Smith, I was signing Lou Reed, Graham Parker. They were not going to break out with hit singles. They were not going to sell the millions that I had to show that we could sell for me to get the next major artist to join Arista. So I tested my ears with the R that stands for repertoire, A&R, artist and repertoire. And for those artists that did not write, or the first artist who wrote, Barry Manilow, he was not writing great hit songs at the very beginning of his career. So I started going to music publishers. I came up with the song Brandy, but when I was head of CBS Records, had Looking Glass record of Brandy, you're a fine one. So I changed the name from Brandy to Mandy. And Manilow, Barry he knew that the first album that he had done before Arista, as he says on the film, sold 5 copies. So he knew that he needed a hit. And he's a great arranger. After a while, he came up with a great tempo and arrangement of Mandy. It was the first record we ever released, and it went straight to #1. So, and thereafter, Barry said, look, I'll give you 2 songs on every album. And I made every song count. And it led me to start signing artists, those that were great, Dionne Warwick, but was no longer recording. I had such a backlog of songs that I signed Dionne, and the first, I'll Never Love This Way Again, went straight to #1. Obviously, a great pleasure is to discover an artist at the beginning of their career. But I've got to say, an equal pleasure is designating, reaching out for those artists who the rest of the world feels has peaked. But I'm saying your talent is timeless. And over the years, whether it's Dionne, whether it's Aretha Franklin, whether it was the second visit with Carlos Santana 30 years after I signed him originally, whether it's with Luther Vandross or Rod Stewart, it's a big pleasure to say, hey, now, just because your last album or 2 has not made it, you are timeless, and we're going to do music and show that you could be on top again.
There's so much friendship on this documentary. That's something that really sort of rang true for me, was that artists are very quick to point out that it's more than just guidance and it's more than just business, that they consider you a real friend. Now, the music business is known for making a lot of fake friends, not a lot of real friends. And I wondered for you, what's the secret to making real friends in the music business? Like, how have you achieved that?
The relationship of dedicating yourself to the career of someone else is so personal, so strong, so intimate, that of course a bond is created. But I worked from the morning until 8 o'clock at night in my office. Then I go home. So it's not that I went to dinners, hung out. Everybody's got their different style. My bond was created by the intense laser beam focus on the career of that artist and that bond. Once in a while, over many, many years with Barry Manilow, once in a while, Whitney would come and we'd have lunch in my office. And obviously the bond is there. But it's a personal bond. But it's not that we were going to Yankee games or that we were hanging out for the weekend. Other people, David Geffen in his vintage years would have artists live in, extra bedrooms at his house. No, I had a family and tried in the hours that were not dedicated to the passion of music to spend it with my kids. I still have dinner with my kids, 4 kids, 8 grandkids. I have dinner with my kids every Sunday. They've each got better friends among themselves. I know that, as they say, God forbid, that if any crisis or pain comes up, that it is family that doesn't hesitate, doesn't really reaches out and knows I got to be there.
You mentioned it a little bit earlier, Janis as the first artist that you signed. And everybody knows that Janis's story met with a tragic ending way too soon. In the documentary, obviously, there's a respectful amount dedicated to the life of Whitney. There's footage of Scott from Velvet Revolver. And this year alone, we've lost Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. And I think it's long been known that within the artistic community, that need to express oneself comes from a place of being unable to do so within normal framework. And that's in many degrees what drives the artist. They have to say something in that way. You've seen so many talents come and go. I wonder what you've learned about the artistic spirit and the challenges it faces functioning in everyday life.
All artists have a tough balance. First of all, if they're introverted, you're required to be extroverted. You're required to be out there in the public life. And the usual quality of stars is not only extreme vulnerability and sensitivity, but also a very aggressive ego. That ability to come front and center stage, with many of them, there's a strong competitive spirit. With many of them, there's a need to be on top. There's pain if you are on top and drop from it. So the challenge of getting there is just one hurdle. But when you're there, the need to stay there is so intense. And the proneness to depression, as everybody is challenged, there are always obstacles to get through. So you don't go to easy street. Once you get there, oh my God, am I going to have the sophomore jinx? How long will this last? How will I come back? I have found in my career, one of the blessed things is how long the artists have lasted that I've signed. Seeing Billy Joel, seeing Bruce Springsteen, seeing Santana, Manilow, Aretha headline and fill arenas up all over the world. Just 30 years, 40 years, amazing. So the need for not just the money, but the need for the public adulation, the need for that appreciation of music is a very intense one. So you do have an awful lot of tension that you're facing on the way up, longevity, on the way down, resilience that affects the equilibrium, and also putting into context fame, putting into context adulation, and having it affect or not affect your personal life, whether it's a partner with your spouse or whether or not it's a parent. It's very difficult to adjustment. There's no question about it.
Is it in these artists before the fame and the adulation? With Whitney, do you think it was there from the very beginning and it was just exacerbated by the attention and the pressure and the stress?
I'm glad you asked that. I've been thinking about that so much as I see other documentary on her or the tabloids about her. I think it was not that with Whitney. She was not that competitive as an artist. She didn't have that type of demon as she might have. I really think her problem was a latent addiction to drugs. I really think that as a person, I had to keep prodding her. You don't understand, Whitney. We've had 7 consecutive #1 records. This is so abnormal. No one else has done that. I kept saying, you got to say, I'm pinching myself. So whenever I would see Whitney, she'd whisper in my ear, I'm pinching myself. And privately, she would say, I get it. But she was tireless. And she loved music. The true Whitney, she knew every record that was out. In her moments, she was a fashion model when I met her. They're trying to portray it from the hood, that she really couldn't be herself. She wanted blacker music. Well, that is nonsense. She came from an urban African-American family. Her mother was a church minister. When I met her, she was a fashion model, a really fast-rising. Whitney always picked her hairstyle. Whitney always picked her dresses. Strong woman. No one. When it came to music, we were partners because she knew my track record for Dion and Aretha before her. But there's no question that when I auditioned her, she was singing 2 songs in a Mother's Act. What were those 2 songs? No relationship to me. One was Home from The Wiz, the Broadway show, and the other one was The Greatest Love of All, a song that I had commissioned 8 years earlier for the movie based on the life of Muhammad Ali. The record, George Benson did it. It became a top 10 R&B. Well, That stunned me. Here is this 19, 18-year-old girl finding more meaning in that song than the composers knew were there when they wrote it. And of course the film, because 2 weeks after we signed together, I brought her on this national TV show known as Merv Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
And you see her breathing life into the song Home from The Wiz. She had such natural gifts. I didn't tell her to turn the other way or pregnant pause with I will always love you. I mean, when you see her incredible performance of that song in concert, and that pregnant pause before she comes back.
What about the moment in the national anthem when she holds the note and ends it perfectly in line with the band?
Exactly.
And she wasn't looking at the band; she had her eyes closed. That's tapped into something altogether different.
She was a vocal genius, and so therefore, her favorite artists were Lena Horne and Dionne Warwick. When I had met her, so she was very, very special. A hard work ethic. At some point, I would say probably during or after Bodyguard. I don't know. I was a little less present in her movie years because all I had to do was find songs for a movie when she did Bodyguard, Waiting to Exhale, and Preacher's Wife. At some point during that years, there's no doubt, and the film was very graphic in portraying the impact of drugs. Maybe I was a year or two late in discovering it because she was always there for me. She was always there to perform at charities. She was always there to, if I was getting an award, she had to be there. She dressed up whenever we got together. So maybe I was a year or two late in being aware of it. But the film does show, when I was aware of it, my entreaties to her. And initially they were rejected. She thought she was just doing normal stuff. But ultimately, especially when you see in the film her at the Michael Jackson concert, looking like a skeleton, singing, and it shows the letter that I wrote to her, where I read it and beg her, in effect, to get treatment and go into rehab. We thought she beat it. When she confessed to Oprah, we thought that she had beaten it. But there are two sides of Whitney. Obviously, the one, the tragic, early, premature demise. But there was the other side, the girl who loved music, who loved fashion, who had such natural gifts. You can't teach someone how to give an all-time, never duplicated performance, as you say, of the Star-Spangled Banner, or I Will Always Love You. We always say put Aretha Franklin to one side as the Queen of Soul, Rolling Stone magazine readers, the greatest vocalist of all time. In contemporary music life, or in all-time music, to me, there are three of the three greatest are, in no particular order, are Aretha Franklin, Barbra Streisand, and Whitney Houston.
Who that's singing and making music now gets the Clive Davis seal of approval? Who are the people that you really think something very special going on there?
I would say Adele has shown, don't cherry pick me. Don't just be satisfied with one or two of my singles. You've got to hear the whole album. I think Jennifer Hudson, as I said, has an incredible voice. I am very impressed with Sam Smith. I look forward to his brand new album. I'm impressed with Ed Sheeran. I'm very aware of the structure of his songs, and I'm really glad that in the midst of a dance and a hip-hop world, that songs by him can break through.
Connect.
I'm impressed with what
and the
Taylor...
Queen, Beyonce, who to me is the greatest living
her album
performer.
Was fantastic.
I mean, I think she's the greatest living performer on the planet right now.
Yes, yeah.
And singer.
Oh, yeah, she's a big star. She's great, creative. I've watched her, come from Destiny's Child, emerge in her own right, both as an actress, as a creative person, as a vocalist. And, of course, I will tell you that a young Renaissance woman from the day I met her is Alicia Keys. And I couldn't believe, if I might be permitted to share with you a reminiscence. Here, Alicia Keys was 18 years old. She was under contract to Columbia, since she was 16. And Peter Edge and she called me up and said, you got to see this young artist. I thought it was a tease, I thought, when she came to see me and we chatted, I'm stunned by her beauty to begin with. And then she sits down at the piano and you see the musicality and the creativity and you hear her sing her songs. I say, are you still under contract to Columbia? And she and her manager said, yes. I said, well, listen, if you're asking me would I, if you were free, be interested in signing you, the answer, of course, is yes. But how are you going to get a release? I mean, it's a no-brainer when you see you and hear you. And she said, you leave that to us. And it's the old story. She was signed by an A&R person there, or so I've been told, who was no longer there. And a new administration had come in looking for their artists and not paying the appropriate attention to the artists that had not made it, that were still on the label. And so because of really, they knew who she was, but they were trying to give her material. Let me make a separate, you don't give outside material to a self-contained artist like Alicia Keys. But amazingly, Alicia got a release from Columbia, came to me first at Arista and then when I formed Jay, and her eye for talent, I put on at my Grammy party a Chance the Rapper or Janelle Monáe because I first saw them at the Black Ball and it was Alicia that was doing the advanced A&R work.
Her energy is amazing.
Articulate. She could have gone on to be a professor. She really, music is in her blood.
Sir Clive Davis, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for your time.
It was really my pleasure to be here. And let me say, I've done a number of interviews, but your astuteness plus knowledge of music and makes it very easy for the interviewee to feel very comfortable and give their best.